Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The words hung in the air between us like smoke from a dying fire. Stay with me tonight or the deal ends. Marcus Ashford said it without blinking, his steel-gray eyes fixed on mine across the mahogany table of his private dining room. 53 floors above Manhattan, the city glittered beneath us like scattered diamonds, and I felt my entire world narrowing to this single, impossible moment. My name is Alina Reyes. I was 31 years old, drowning in debt I never created, fighting to save a business my mother had built with her bare hands before cancer stole her from me. And now the wealthiest man I had ever met was reducing everything to a transaction that felt like selling my soul. I should tell you how I got here. 3 months earlier, I stood in a hospital room, watching my mother take her final breath. She squeezed my hand with what little strength remained and whispered, "Save the foundation, Mija. Those children need you." The Reyes Community Foundation served over 200 underprivileged kids in the Bronx. After-school programs, tutoring, meals, hope. My mother had poured 30 years of her life into giving children what she never had growing up in poverty. But what she did not tell me, what I discovered in the weeks after her funeral, was that her business partner had embezzled nearly everything. David Chen had vanished with $3 million, leaving behind falsified documents and a foundation on the verge of collapse. The building was mortgaged. The accounts were empty, creditors circled like vultures. I tried everything. Banks turned me away. Investors laughed at my desperation. Every door slammed in my face while the calendar pages fell away like autumn leaves. I had 60 days before foreclosure. Then I heard about Marcus Ashford. He was the kind of billionaire people whispered about in hushed, reverent tones. Self-made, ruthless, brilliant. He had climbed from nothing, from a childhood of food stamps and foster homes to commanding an empire worth $12 billion. But he was also known for something else. He funded causes no one else would touch. He had saved hospitals, schools, entire neighborhoods from destruction. Some called him a savior. Others called him something far darker. I spent 2 weeks trying to get a meeting. His assistant hung up on me 11 times. I waited outside his office building for 6 hours in freezing rain until security escorted me away. I wrote letters that went unanswered. I was nobody, a desperate woman with a dying dream. Then one evening my phone rang. "Miss Reyes." The voice was cold, efficient. "Mr. Ashford will see you tomorrow at 7. Do not be late." The line went dead before I could respond. I did not sleep that night. I lay in my small apartment, staring at the water stain on my ceiling, wondering what kind of man summons strangers at his whim. Wondering what I would have to give to save everything my mother had sacrificed for. Wondering if I was walking into salvation or something far more dangerous. The Ashford Tower lobby smelled like money and intimidation. White marble floors gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. I clutched my folder of documents against my chest like armor, painfully aware of my second-hand blazer and shoes with soles worn thin from too much walking. A woman in designer black appeared before me. "Miss Reyes, follow me." No smile, no warmth, just clinical efficiency as she led me to a private elevator that required a fingerprint scan. We rose in silence. 53 floors of my heart pounding against my ribs. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space that looked like it belonged in a museum. Original paintings, sculptures that seemed to breathe. A wall of windows revealing Manhattan in all its evening glory. And there he was. Marcus Ashford stood with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Mandarin that I could not understand. He was taller than I expected, broader shoulders. His dark hair showed threads of silver at the temples, and when he finally turned, I understood why people used words like magnetic and dangerous in the same breath. His face was handsome in a severe way, all sharp angles and shadows, but his eyes were the color of winter storms, and they assessed me like I was a problem to be solved or dismissed. He ended his call without greeting me, simply gestured to a chair. "Sit." I sat. My folder trembled slightly in my hands. "You have been quite persistent, Miss Reyes." He poured himself a drink from a crystal decanter, offering me nothing. Most people take no for an answer after the third rejection. Most people have not watched their mother die, believing them capable of carrying on her legacy. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. "I do not have the luxury of giving up." Something flickered in his expression, a crack in the granite. He sat across from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, sandalwood and something darker. "Tell me about your foundation." I told him everything, the children we served, their faces swimming before me as I spoke. Marcus, who had aged out of foster care and now tutored younger kids. Isabella, who had not smiled until she discovered painting in our art program. Devin, whose mother worked 3 jobs and trusted us to keep her son safe and fed after school. I told him about my mother's vision, about the betrayal that nearly destroyed it, about the deadline looming like an executioner's blade. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, the silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. "I have read your proposal." He tapped a finger against his glass. "Your numbers are solid, your mission is admirable, but I need to know something before I consider this further." "Anything." His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Why should I trust you when everyone I have ever trusted has eventually disappointed me?" The question held more weight than business. Over the following weeks, Marcus Ashford dismantled my defenses one meeting at a time. He demanded complete transparency. Financial records, personal history, references from everyone I had ever worked with. He sent his people to the foundation unannounced, watching how we operated when we thought no one was observing. He wanted to see the truth of who I was, and somewhere in that process, something unexpected began to grow. He started showing up at the foundation himself. The first time, I found him sitting in the corner of our community room, watching children work on homework with volunteer tutors. His expression held something I could not name, hunger maybe, or grief. "I was in a place like this once," he said quietly when I approached. "A church basement in Detroit, the only warm place I knew during winter. A woman named Mrs. Patterson gave me my first book, taught me that words could be doors to different worlds." I sat beside him, feeling the protective walls around my own heart shifting slightly. "What happened to her?" "She died when I was 14. The program closed 3 months later." He turned to look at me, and for the first time, I saw the boy he had been beneath the armor of the man he had become. I have never forgotten that feeling, watching something good disappear because no one cared enough to save it. That was the night I began to understand Marcus Ashford was more than his reputation. He was wounded, guarded, and desperately lonely beneath the power and wealth. He had built walls so high that no one could hurt him again. But those same walls kept out everything good. We started having dinner together after meetings. Business discussions gradually gave way to personal conversations. He told me about aging out of foster care with nothing but a duffel bag and a determination to never be powerless again. I told him about watching my mother work 18-hour days, coming home smelling like industrial cleaner, still finding energy to help me with my homework. "She sounds remarkable," he said one evening, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. She is the reason I cannot fail." His hand covered mine on the table, brief, warm, startling. "You will not fail, Alina. I am going to fund your foundation, full restoration, enough to sustain you for 5 years." My eyes filled with tears. "Marcus, I do not know how to thank you." "Then do not. Just prove that my faith in you is not misplaced." I believed him. I believed in him. I let myself feel something I had not allowed since burying my mother. Hope, trust, the dangerous beginnings of something deeper. That was my mistake. Because 2 weeks later, I sat across from him in his private dining room, and everything I thought I knew about Marcus Ashford shattered into pieces. "Stay with me tonight," he said, swirling his wine without breaking eye contact, "or the deal ends." The words crashed over me like ice water. My body went cold, then hot, then cold again as his words carved through every tender feeling I had allowed myself to develop. The man I had glimpsed beneath the billionaire mask, the wounded boy, the lonely soul, seemed to evaporate before my eyes. "Excuse me." My voice emerged as a whisper. "You heard me." He set down his glass with deliberate calm. "I have been watching you for weeks, Alina. You are different from the others. You have fire, integrity, but everyone has a price. Everyone compromises eventually. I need to know where your line is." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "This is a test. Everything is a test. Life is a series of negotiations. I am simply being transparent about mine." I thought of my mother's face, the children counting on me, the deadline now just days away. I thought of every sacrifice I had made, every humiliation I had swallowed, every night I had cried myself to sleep wondering if I was strong enough to carry this weight. And I thought of who I was beneath all of it, the woman my mother raised me to be. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the marble floor. "You want to know where my line is, Marcus? Here it is." My voice grew stronger with each word. "I am not for sale, not for $3 million, not for 30 million, not for every penny you possess." His expression remained unreadable. "But more than that," I continued, reaching into my bag, "I need you to understand something about who you are dealing with." I pulled out a folder and placed it on the table between us. Inside were documents I had obtained 3 days earlier. Documents I had been wrestling with ever since. I did my own research, Marcus, the same thorough investigation you conducted on me, and I found something interesting. I opened the folder. "Mrs. Patterson, the woman who gave you your first book, she did not just run a program in a church basement." His face went pale. "She adopted 12 children over her lifetime, raised them with nothing but love and faith. She died of heart failure, yes, but she had a biological daughter. A daughter who was 3 years old when her mother started taking in strays like you. I watched his throat work as he swallowed. That daughter grew up watching her mother give everything to other people's children while they struggled to keep the lights on. She resented it for years, but eventually she understood what her mother was trying to do. I met his eyes directly. That daughter was my mother, Marcus, Maria Reyes. The silence that followed was absolute. His glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Neither of us moved to clean it. The sound of broken crystal faded into nothing as I watched Marcus Ashford, the man who commanded billions, look at me like I had just pulled the ground from beneath his feet. "That is not possible," he whispered. I did not believe it either, not until I found the photographs. The letters Mrs. Patterson wrote to my grandmother about a boy named Marcus who reminded her of a young wolf. All teeth and hunger, she said, but so much tenderness hiding beneath. His hands were shaking. This man who never trembled, who controlled every room he entered, looked at me like I was a ghost come to deliver judgment. "My mother never told me," I continued softly. "Not until the very end. She made me promise to never use it as leverage. Said that if you were the man Mrs. Patterson believed you could become, you would help without needing to know. And if you were not, then nothing I said would matter anyway. But you are telling me now." His voice cracked on the words. "Because you just proved something to me, Marcus. You proved that beneath all this armor, you are still that wounded boy, still testing everyone because you are terrified of being abandoned again. Still pushing people away before they can leave you first." A tear slid down his cheek, just one. But from Marcus Ashford, it felt like watching a glacier begin to melt. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, her name holding decades of grief. "She was the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered, like I could become someone worth being." "I know." I moved closer, no longer afraid of him. "And my mother spent her whole life trying to give other children what your mother figure gave you. That is the legacy we share, Marcus, not money, not power. Love that refuses to give up on broken people." He looked up at me, and I saw the boy who had been abandoned, the teenager who had starved, the young man who had clawed his way to success, and discovered that no amount of wealth could fill the emptiness inside. "I am sorry," he breathed, "for what I said, for the test, for all of it. I know. The deal stands, everything I promised, no conditions." He paused. "But Alina, I need you to know that this was never really about testing your morals. I was testing whether you would stay, whether anyone could see me clearly and still choose not to run." I took his hand then, the billionaire's hand, the orphan's hand. "I am not running, Marcus, not because of the money, not because of the history, but because my mother taught me that people deserve second chances, especially the ones who do not believe they deserve them." 6 months later, the Reyes Community Foundation reopened its doors. Marcus stood beside me at the ribbon cutting, not as a benefactor, but as a volunteer. He comes every Tuesday now, reads to the children, tells them that where you start does not determine where you end. He is learning that walls can come down brick by brick, that trust is not a transaction, that love, real love, cannot be bought or tested, only given freely and received with gratitude. Some stories end with revenge, others with triumph. This one ends with healing. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.